let's leave it right there for a little bit of time. I want to talk about some issues, and I kind of want to let you know. First of all, after that worship, I feel like I ought to just say amen and go home. I feel like my job's done, and that was powerful. What a blessing to be in this house this morning, and what an honor it is to be in Lafayette, Louisiana. Y'all have an incredible community. And I tell you that coming from very much a dump of a town in Georgia, that this is an incredible place and you're very blessed to be here. I know sometimes it doesn't feel like that when you're driving on the roads and you realize they need to be worked on. Banging around on the major roads. But that's a small price to pay to live in a community like this. It really is. Do I need to be standing in another place?
Just hold it as close to your mouth as you can, and you'll
Okay. I tend to drift around a little bit. I want to talk about a fairly dark topic. We're not going to get dark with it, but I want to talk first of all about how we got here. I think it's important for us to understand, especially for people that are 45 and over, we suddenly find ourselves living in a country we don't recognize. Living amongst a people that no longer feel like they're ours. We feel like strangers in a strange land. It's a very bizarre feeling because I grew up in an America where I believed that I could change the country, and I believed my voice mattered, and I believed it was important that I engage in civic opportunities and that sort of thing. And suddenly we live in a world where I don't feel like anybody's listening. I don't feel like Republicans. I've had a fight with the Republicans in my town because I've gone on radio publicly and said that I think the Republican Party has betrayed us all. And I think the Democratic Party has betrayed us all. I'm an equal opportunity person on this. I'm very much a conservative. I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm a social conservative on most issues. I'm what you'd probably call a social liberal on immigration issues. I'm not for open borders, but I do believe that we have an obligation to give back to the world because God has blessed us. And I think one of the reasons America has done so well for so many years is our generosity to the rest of the world. Just like the church and Christians only prosper when we honor God by giving back that 10%. Our country has done the same thing. We never call it a tithe. And a lot of us are mad about it. Why are we giving money to Pakistan? Why are we giving money to these places? But the goodwill that buys has been incredible, but suddenly it doesn't seem to be buying goodwill. And suddenly we don't have any money. I mean, listen, at my house, if we were spending money like this, we'd all be in a ditch somewhere hiding from creditors. Right. We just passed a $1.9 billion stimulus package. I'm sorry, trillion, it's hard to say those numbers. $1.9 trillion, I don't even have any idea how much money that is. And the irony is, it's money we don't even have. I don't even think we can print that much. Here's what I know, and I'm going to be all over the place for about 15 minutes, and I'm going to get back on my PowerPoint and get it in, okay? I'm just going to kind of spew some stuff on you if you don't mind. Here's what I know. We live in a world that suddenly doesn't recognize God. The spirit of this world is not the spirit of our God.
Right, that's right.
And the beliefs of the generations coming up behind us, even the kids that we're raising in church, are further from God than we were. And it's not a fault of theirs. It's the generation. It's a shift in the earth. This is what happened when Israel was living in Palestine in the old days, and they were drawn away by the pagans that were around them. We all look at that and judge, well, how do you build a golden calf after God brings you out of Egypt? If you were spiritual like us, you'd never built a golden calf. But how many of us bow down at the altar of football? Yeah. Not even a golden calf. It's football. How many of us bow down at the altar of money or the altar of our car or the altar of a vacation? At anything that gets between us and God is an altar of sin. And our country celebrates sin. If you don't believe it, turn on the TV. You cannot watch primetime television with your children anymore. You know, when we were growing up, when the Cleavers were, they showed with the Flintstones, a cartoon, they could never show Fred and Wilma in a bed together unless one of them had their feet on a foot on the floor. What I would give to have those days back when I'm trying to watch television with my children. In Georgia, it's still illegal to use profanity in front of a woman or a child. Wouldn't it be nice to have those days back? I sit in restaurants now and hear people cussing like sailors, casually, using words as adjectives that aren't adjectives, and puffing themselves up and getting louder about it because they want to make sure you can hear it. And I told y'all when I was here before, and I told the group last night, I'm a justice guy. If you fall down and hurt your knee, you don't want to come to me, I don't care. God bless you. I hope you get better. But if somebody does something wrong, when I'm sitting in a restaurant and people start cursing, I'm about to fall off this thing, and people start cursing, I'm going to back up a little bit. Oh, that's where the lights went. I thought you dimmed the lights. I'm going, they just dimmed the lights. What is that all about? Okay, I'll stay back behind this line. This is to separate me from you, to give you a little bit of space in case my justice gets overwhelming. We live in a place where I'm sitting in a restaurant and I hear some young punk using profanity like he's cool, and my daughter is sitting there listening to this, and my wife is sitting there listening to this, and they have to hold me down to not get up and go over and say, you're either going to shut up or I'm going to shut you up. That's what rages in me, I guess. But how did we get here? How did we get to this place? How did we get to a place where nobody has a regard for God anymore? Hey. Because that's what this is about. This is about disrespecting the creator of the universe.
Yep.
Well, let me give you just a crash course. And I taught this at Charlie Coker's church about 5 or 6 months ago, and it took about an hour and a half. I promise you, I know I'm not going to do that because I'm going to get to this PowerPoint, I promise. Here's how it goes. And it's things that we all know about. I'm not going to give you anything that I'm not going to reveal any great secrets. I just want to tie some stuff together. This begins with concepts like evolution. There is no God. See, some of you probably remember when Time magazine came out with the cover that said God is dead. And as Christians, we all got offended. But what they were saying was the concept of God is dying in America. And evolution had a lot to do with that, because evolution taught that the world happened out of chaos. That there was no God to intervene. There was no intelligent designer. There was no creator. It just, a billion things happened simultaneously and happened in such a way to get to this. Now, Tony, I know you're a cook, and you're a very good cook, by the way. And I know that you probably sit in your kitchen and get all the ingredients for your meals and just throw them on the countertop, put them in a bag and shake them up and go, there, it's done. We can't even get food to evolve into a meal without an intelligent creator stepping in and doing something. How stupid do you have to be to believe that there's no God to do that?
Right.
When I talk to people who believe in evolution, I tell them, here's the problem with you. You're a person of more faith than me. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. And you've got more faith than me. And they kind of look at me puzzled and go, I don't understand. It takes faith every day to believe that every time a change occurs in a minuscule cell, that change is the right change. And that the next change, you have to have faith 1 billion times to get to mankind alive on earth without God. Yeah. I have to have faith one time. There's a God End of discussion.
Right.
If there's a God, he can do whatever he wants to do.
That's right.
He can do it however he wants to do it. I don't care if it took God 6 days or 6 billion years to build the planet. It's his. He can do it how he wants. Now, I personally believe it took him 6 days. But that's not a hill to die on, because the hill to die on is there a God?
Right.
Not how did God decide. Who am I to tell God how he had to do it?
Right.
How arrogant is that to go, well, no, this is the only way you can do it, God. It's the only way that's acceptable in our denomination.
You're right.
Doesn't mean we're wrong. Just we need a little bit of an attitude change. So you start with evolution, the idea that God is dead. And why that is so important and why that is so critical is if God is dead, human life begins to lose its value. So in the midst of all of that, in the midst of the build-up to the Scopes monkey trial, which determined that you could teach evolution in school alongside creationism, in the midst of that flow, there was a thing called eugenics, the study of how genetics work and how people are developed and what makes us what we are, the study of DNA. And Margaret Sanger was a eugenics expert. You've heard her name. I know you've heard it in the last year because it's been thrown around like candy. Margaret Sanger believed that African Americans, that black people, but black people all over the world, you didn't have to have come to America to qualify under her guidelines, were inferior people. They weren't as intelligent. They weren't as physically developed. They weren't as emotionally developed. She believed that, and she believed that because of that, it was okay if we did some things to slow down the birth of black people. Now, I don't care. I think I could be the head of the KKK and go, that's stupid. I'm not, so don't anybody panic. But that's, I mean, to say that there's that kind of difference, you're not looking around. You're not paying attention. But she used that along with the evolutionary idea that God is dead to say that it's okay for us to start aborting African American babies because they'd be better off not to be born because they're born inferior and they're born in poverty and they're not able to learn and they're not able to be as good as white people, and therefore we should just, it's okay to get rid of them. And that's where Planned Parenthood came from. He only lies. Even his truths are lies. Now, this same Planned Parenthood that she's creating, they're now putting Planned Parenthood clinics in public schools on the West Coast to help kids with birth control issues, to help kids get an abortion, to help kids get medication if they think they're a girl and they need to get estrogen shots. Planned Parenthood will give it to you at school without talking to your parents. To get to that place, God has to be dead. To get to the place where one race of people, one skin color of people, because we're all one race. There's only one race. I'm sorry. I won't do that again, sister. To get to the place where we're so shallow that we're willing to judge people by the color of their skin, shame on all of us. And listen, it's in all of us. There's a natural affinity to what you are. Men enjoy being men. Women enjoy being men. Or women, I'm sorry. And in this world, some men enjoy being women. But men don't want to be women. And most women I know don't want to be men. They don't even want to talk to us most of the time. It's like, what did you say? Did you just say, my wife, did you just say that out loud? I didn't mean to. I'll be on the radio and she'll text me going, you need to take that one back. And she doesn't know I'm not watching my text while I'm on radio. So I can't take it back. So we got there through that. Now here's the brilliance of this. This eugenics belief by Margaret Sanger was so brilliant that guess who adopted her belief? Adolf Hitler. And what did he adopt it for? To get rid of Jews, another inferior race. You know, I'm probably going to go here, but my mind's telling me to stop. I can see the text from my wife right now. I'm going to stop. That's how we get here. And then we go a step further now, because if we've got evolution and we've got prayer out of schools because there is no God, so why would you pray to him? And we've got eugenics telling us that we can control how we are and further dividing us, then why not just go ahead and open the whole world up and say anything goes? A man can be a woman. A woman can be a man. And we can make it happen. We can give you drugs. We can give you surgery. They're now talking about doing facial reconstruction surgery on transgender people so that men will look more like women and women will look more like men because our facial structures are different. You can't do all that if there's a God. Abortion. We've killed, I don't even know that I can tell you the number anymore. Tens of millions of babies for the simple reason that we needed a more convenient life. Now listen, I've got 2 kids and I can tell you they're a disruption. And I love them. They're great people and they're almost grown. But some days you go, we would have been smart to leave this part out. I would still have money. I would still have my sanity. I could probably remember why I walked into a room still. But I wouldn't trade them for anything. But it takes a sacrifice. And we suddenly live in a country that's not willing to sacrifice. Oh, they're making us wear masks. This is the worst thing in the world. How do we do this? I don't care if you wear a mask or you don't. But guess what we did by wearing masks? We eradicated flu this year. And that's not just because of COVID testing. I'm being serious now. Last year, there were 400,000 hospitalizations across America for the flu. 400,000 people went to the hospital and were admitted to the hospital with a severe case of the flu. Since October of 2020, there have been 164 cases. That's all a mask. That's all about mask and sanitizing your hands. We know the flu passes that way. We ought to be wearing masks every year. I'm thinking about starting to wear a mask. But we're so at a point. Our fathers and our grandfathers and our grandmothers sacrificed everything to create what we've got. And we're not willing to sacrifice anything to keep it up. It's like what happened at the Capitol on January the 6th. I'm going to get in all kinds of trouble now. I've decided to go for it. What happened at the Capitol on January 6th, if that was an insurrection, I'm ashamed to be an American. That's the best we can do? Go into the Capitol, break a few things, steal a podium, scribble some stuff on a wall. I think 6 people died, and I'm not belittling that, but that's not an insurrection. They're trying to divide us, people. They're trying to divide us and say, white people aren't as good as black people. Black people aren't as good as white people. And I know it's a lie because we're all people. And guess what? None of us are good. So why are we competing to be gooder? Don't tell my law school professors I just said gooder. I mean, why would we fight that fight? We're getting distracted worrying about these wild theories that are out there on all this stuff going on. Listen, let me let you peek behind the curtain. There are really bad, I feel really bad because I feel like I'm standing on this line and I just can't quite cross it. And let me tell you this. Just trying to stay in the light, brother. Just trying to stay in the light. There are some really evil people in this world. And a majority of them work in Washington, D.C. They're not for us. But I'm not discouraged by that because they're not my hope. politics, I worked with Jay Sekulow for 15 years, Donald Trump's attorney in the impeachment trial. He used to say when I first started working with him, the reason I don't engage in politics is politics never raised anybody from the dead. Not a soul. In fact, politics has lowered people from life to death. It's killed people. The whole way we've responded to COVID. 500,000 people have died in America, a lot of whom didn't need to die because of politics. Poor people are dying in this country every day. People are starving to death around the world every day because of politics. It's not the church that's killing people. Jesus isn't killing people. It's all these people that we keep going, well, they're our leaders. They're not my leader. I didn't even vote for most of them. Most of them aren't from my district. I couldn't vote for them. The one in my district, I didn't vote for her. They're trying to throw her out, Marjorie Greene. I didn't vote for her because I thought she was crazy. She was ours, but she was crazy. We've got to get our mind back on reality. There is a God, and He cares. He doesn't care what's going on in Washington. He doesn't care whether Joe Biden's the smartest man in the world or half dead. And I don't know which, I'll be honest with you. I've met him once. I met him once in the halls of Congress when he was in the Senate. Really nice guy. Not the brightest bulb on the tree. But that's okay. Frankly, anybody that thinks they could be president of the United States ought to be disqualified. I don't think I could do that job. I don't think anybody can do the job. And I don't think it really matters. Because at the end of the day, America is not going to save people and get them into heaven. In fact, at the end of the day, America is going to drag as many people into hell as Russia and China. Now, it's not time to stand up and start waving your flags. I get it. This isn't this isn't your 4th of July sermon. But I say that with an incredible love for America. Because when I travel around the world, one thing that happens is I get a lot of respect because I'm an American. People around the world, I was asked the other day, Friday, I was in the car with Pastor Bobby doing a local radio program back home, and the guy that is the co-host of the show said, well, when you travel around the world, what are people saying about America? And I said, people are scared right now for what's going on in America because they're afraid that the last bastion of freedom is about to go. America has a lot of respect. I have incredible respect for this country. My uncle landed on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day and fought across France into Germany, where he was finally wounded and knocked out of the war. Then he volunteered and fought in Korea. And then, because he's a special kind of crazy, he volunteered and fought in Vietnam. That's the family I come from. I love them. I say all this with a great love for America, but I understand there's a difference in America and the politics of America, which is set to divide us. If you're watching TV and getting your motivation from TV, you're getting the wrong motivation. I spend more time looking at headlines than I do looking at everything else because I want to have some understanding of what goes on, but I don't want to get bogged down in the minutia and the lies of what's going on. You can't do it. You can't. If you're watching TV to get news, you're just making yourself mad. I don't care if you're watching One American News Network, CNN, Fox, Newsmax. Listen, here's what happened that we never paid attention to. At some point, television news became entertainment. It became about money, selling advertisement. What can I do to get the biggest audience? And we missed the transition. Nobody told us it was transitioning. And in the midst of a country where God is dead, if you're going to worship something, it might as well be cash. Because I've heard money won't let you buy happiness, but it will let you choose your own brand of misery. And it'll let you have a bunch of toys. And if there is no God, Paul said it, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. I'm quoting gospel to you now. Now I'm quoting half of it. Because we know that there's a resurrection. We know that what we're doing now is not the reality we ultimately face. And we've got to start living like that. One of the things that's going on in the world, and now I'm going to get to my PowerPoint so we can do away with the beautiful scenery behind me. There we go. Oh, it's just beautiful scenery in front of me. That's nice. We've got to get to a place where we're doing God's work and doing what God has called us to do. And I'm starting a new project. It's something I've been dabbling in for years, and I want to run through this relatively quickly. We're not going to stay here forever. Bobby said we had to be out by 1:30. I think I can pull that off. I've got a 3-something air flight, so we have to be out in time for me to get to the airport. How about that? Fair enough? Anyway, let's go to the first slide. I want to talk about human trafficking, particularly sex trafficking. This is what I told you. It's a dark subject, and it was important for me to let you understand that you have to have God dead, you have to have eugenics, you have to have abortion, you have to have the whole LGBTQ community operating and convincing the world that God really doesn't matter. If God didn't create men and women or they were a mistake, then nothing else matters. And in that world where life has been that devalued, you can get to a place where it feels all right to sell people as a commodity. It's not the first time people have been sold as a commodity. The American slave market wasn't the first time people have been sold as... Well, actually, the American slave market was probably the first time that people were sold as a commodity, but people were traded as commodities throughout history. There were always slaves. There were slaves. Jesus encountered slaves in his everyday work. They weren't economic slaves. They were people who were enslaved because they'd been defeated at a war. The cost for losing a war was you get to go to my house and do whatever I tell you to do or die. Not to justify anything. The thing that makes American slavery so evil and so exceptional was it was a pure financial slavery. There was not a war that was fought and we conquered somebody and said, now you're going to be our slaves. We just said, who will you sell us? And people were willing to sell us people from Africa, and we bought them and used and abused them and destroyed their lives. No justification for it ever. Whether you're white or black, there's no justification for that. Anyway, I'm going to get off that soapbox. $150 billion a year in 2019. It was $32 billion a year in 2005. It's 5 times increase in the revenue they're generating in the last 16 years. 99 billion of that is sex slave trafficking. $100 billion a year is being generated by selling girls, boys, men, and women for sex. You can't do that in a world where God is alive. You can't do that in a world where life has value. You can only do that if you can live in a world that now is the only thing that matters. And that's the spirit of this culture. Right now in America, the spirit of this culture is today matters. Live for today. You've got 25 to 40 million victims worldwide of human trafficking. That's labor and sex trafficking. Now, the numbers are vague and the numbers are kind of squishy. I mean, 25 to 40 is a huge gap. This is all underground. It's all illegal. They don't file tax returns. You know, if you're a sex trafficker, you don't file a tax return at the end of the year and say, I made $1 million, I had 14 employees. So there's not any real way to do this. These are all done on estimations based on people we're finding out about, information that we're learning. The average age that a girl is sex trafficked is 14. 14. They're little girls. That's the average age. In Louisiana, there are children as young as 5 that have been trafficked. In Louisiana. You can't believe in God and do that. And guess what else? You can't believe in God and let that happen in the world you live in. Now I've gone to meddling, hadn't I? That's the truth. I'm going to warn you, you might want to leave, because once you've heard this, you're accountable. And I'm not trying to condemn anybody, make anybody feel good, bad, because I know we've all got different callings and everybody's not called to the same level of different things. But once we know about it, we're accountable for it, and we're going to have to do something about it, even if it's just pray. The average life expectancy is 7 years until they're dead. So a 14-year-old girl gets trafficked. By the time she's 21, if she's normal, she's going to be dead. From a drug overdose, alcohol overdose, she's going to be beaten to death. She's going to maybe die of a sexually transmitted disease, any of those things, but she's going to be dead in 7 years. Not out of the business, gone. And the worst stat of all, less than 1% of sex traffic victims are rescued. Let that sink in. They die their way out. We're not getting them. This has gotten out of control. And I started realizing this about 7 or 8, 9 years ago. And I finally reached a point in my life where I just said, enough. I'm going to dedicate the remainder of my life to stopping this. Because this is not acceptable on my watch. I am not going to stand in front of Jesus and go, I'm sorry about all your children that didn't get to experience life. I'm sorry about the pain they all went through. This is not just not getting to watch cartoons. This is prostitution with 20 to 30 clients a night. 6 and 7 days a week. No vacation. No sick days. No holidays. No personal days to go see mama. The United States Marshal Service estimates that there are about 65,000 young people who are victims of sex trafficking every year in America. This is not something that's happening somewhere else in the world. It's not something that's somebody else's problem. This is our problem. The land of the free and the home of the brave, a Christian nation. It's going on. In Louisiana, I've got some numbers. We're just going to go through them quickly. It's a little bit confusing if we'll go to the next slide. In Louisiana, what I want you to see is just a little bit of the progression from 17 to 18 to 19. These are juveniles that were trafficked. There were 543 juveniles that were trafficked in Louisiana that we know about. Now, Louisiana is not doing a great job of the stats, and they're not really organized. We're working on that. That's one of the things that's come out of this week, is we're going to be doing specific work in Lafayette from here forward. I've committed to this community to be here to start driving the stake in the ground and saying, we're not taking it anymore. Lafayette, Louisiana is done. Is that a fair statement, Pastor? We're done. In 2019, 106 of those victims were 12 and under. Almost a fifth. 12 years old. You talk about robbing a life and having no concern for life. Let's go to the next slide. This is the last of the Louisiana numbers. I just want you to see that of the about 900, a little bit more than 900, 811 of them were females. 409, about 45%, were African American. Whites were 584%, about 55%, a little bit less. But it's happening in the black community and in the white community, almost equally. This is all of our problem. So we're gonna keep going through this because I'm not here to talk to you about problems. I'm here to talk about solutions, because I'm like I said, I'm dedicating myself to this. So let's go to solutions. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. This is the fight that's before us. It's spiritual. It's important because it is the life of the church that is ultimately at stake. If the church does not combat human sex trafficking, it can't be relevant in this generation. I believe that with all my heart. I'm not a pastor. I may be out of line to say it. Anybody that wants to throw a stone, I'll take it. That's what I believe. We can't be flippant because it is the church. We must be praying like never before. We must be holy like never before. One of the reasons nothing gets done about this is there's a lot of guilty men in this world who are participating in this at high levels. Very high levels. It's the only way you keep this hidden and active. We must be full of love like never before. We're not going to win this battle by hating people. You know, that's what we've lost in the last year. We've decided that it's good to hate Democrats. We're supposed to hate Republicans. I'm supposed to hate black people because I'm white. I'm supposed to hate white people because I'm black. It doesn't matter if someone spits in your eye, if someone kills your parents. Jesus didn't go, love your brother unless he kills your mama. We're commanded to love, period. No exceptions, including traffickers. We're not going to beat them by hating them. We're going to beat them by loving these girls so much that we're willing to do anything we can to stop it from happening. And then we have to engage the culture at all points of the Seven Mountain Mandate, and it's going to involve the legal system. So on the next slide, I'm going to give you the 7 mountains. I know y'all talk about this some in this church. You've got government and law, media, news and commentary, education, arts and entertainment, business and economics, family, faith and religion. All of those areas are the areas of influence that make up a given culture. And one of the things we're going to do with this battle against human trafficking is we're going to start reaching into all of those mountains of influence and bringing the fight against sex trafficking into every one of those mountains. I'm going to talk about a couple of those now, but before I do that, I'm a Bob Dylan freak. I think the last time I was here, I quoted Bob Dylan. This is embarrassing to tell you, but I'm going to do it anyway. The revelation that I've gotten on how to do this, God gave to me through a Bob Dylan song. Now, half of you are going, how did you understand what he said? And the other half are going, who? If you're the who person, don't bring that up to me. Let's go to the next one. Well, I'm sorry I didn't go there. What happened to my Bob Dylan song? Well, we'll start. There we go. The voice of God as far as I'm concerned. He's got a song called Blind Willie McTell. And look at this. Seeing the arrow on the doorpost saying, this land is condemned. All the way from New Orleans to Jerusalem. When I started praying about this, I decided that the most important thing to do was prayer. It's where we live. You know, we're the faith mountain. So prayer is our heart and our home. And we're families, and families pray. And so I decided the most important thing that hasn't been done is organized, concerted prayer specifically against human trafficking. And we're starting that in Jerusalem. I'm going to Jerusalem as soon as it opens up, probably in June or July, which are not good months to be in Jerusalem because it'll be 100, 110 degrees. But I'm going because God has told me when I get to Jerusalem, he's going to reveal this plan. And I'm taking a group of people with me, pastors, prophetic people that I trust, that I've known for years. And we're going to go and meet together and pray together, walk around Jerusalem, go to the Garden of Gethsemane and pray. We're going to talk about that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But I knew that I had to start in Jerusalem. And I was praying about this one day. What do we do? Where do we go? Because we're going to be building these prayer centers in all of these places all over the world. And I wasn't sure where to put the second one. I was thinking maybe we should go to Europe with it. But this Bob Dylan song came on. It said, this land is condemned. all the way from New Orleans to Jerusalem. I'm starting in Jerusalem. The second prayer center we're going to do, I believe God told me, was to put it in New Orleans. Which is, as we know, I mean, if there's a debauchery anywhere in the world, it happens in New Orleans. Nothing personal, Louisianans. Listen, I can't condemn you. We've got Atlanta. I'm a Georgian. You know, we're doing our best to compete with New Orleans. We just haven't quite gotten there yet. But don't give up on us. Then the rest of this, the next verse talks about, see the big plantations burning and hear the cracking of the whips. It's a reference to slavery in America, but we're talking about slavery. This is all about sex slavery in my mind, using allusions to slavery. Then on the next page, it goes to, I want you to see the very last, or the top verse there. Well, God is in his heaven and we all want what's his. How true is that? That's the problem with man. I could be like God if I eat this apple. That's how we got here. Adam and Eve wanted to be like God. We all want what's his. But power and greed and corruptible seeds seem to be all that there is. I mean, what an incredibly insightful explanation of where we are. Now, I'm not stupid. Sometimes I am. Today, I'm not stupid. And I know that Bob Dylan probably had no idea he was writing this song for me. He was just finding something in his soul, something that God had put in his spirit. He probably didn't have any idea what it was about. He probably thought it was about slavery in the 1800s. But I believe God gave this song to Bob Dylan so Bob Dylan could give it to me, to start guiding us on how we fight this and how we stop people from wanting what's God's, and we get away from power and greed and the corruptible seed. That's what we're called to as people of faith. Now let's quickly go through, let's go back to that first pic. I think it's the next, is it before or after this? I've completely lost my way. No, the other one. There we go. We're starting with the mountains where we rule, the mountains of family and faith. That's a picture of Jerusalem. I'm going to Jerusalem to set up a permanent prayer team in Jerusalem. They're going to do quiet prayer walks. We're not making a big splash. We're not looking to get everybody upset and have everybody, make a scene. We're talking two people walking down the street in Jerusalem praying about human trafficking. We're talking about going to there are 8 gates in Jerusalem, in the old city, in the walled city. There's the gate right here that you can't really see. There's a gate right here that is the gate that Jesus is supposed to come back to. It's called the Golden Gate. But there are 8 gates around the city. We're going to have a member of the prayer team go to each of the gates of the city at least once a month, look out from Jerusalem, and declare to the world that we're ending human trafficking. And we're starting in Jerusalem. Why Jerusalem? Jerusalem's the spiritual center of the world. There's no question about it. But we're going to be praying. Let's go to the next. We're going to be praying in Jerusalem. That's the Wailing Wall. It's the closest you can get to where the Holy of Holies was in the temple, and pray. We're going to pray there. Let's go to the next. That's the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus went the night before he was taken, or when he was taken, before he was crucified. And we're going to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane to end human trafficking. If it was a good enough place for Jesus to pray, it ought to be good enough for us to pray. Now, this place right here, we'll go back to that for a second. This place right here is blocked off because the Catholics own this, and there's so many people here that you can't get to those trees. But there's a little place that I've found just up the hill that's still part of the Garden of Gethsemane that none of the tourists go to. And you can literally walk up and walk out amongst the olive trees where Jesus would have been, and put your hands on the trees and walk on the ground and pray undisturbed. Again, we're not looking to make a big scene. We're trying to change the world. You don't have to make a big scene to change the world. Sometimes you can't change the world if you make a big scene. Okay, let's go to the next then. And we're going to pray at the palace of King David. Why? Because David was a man after God's own heart. I can assure you David would agree with our battle. But we're going to pray all over Jerusalem, and then we're going to bring it back to New Orleans. Let's go ahead. I've already talked about the mechanics of the prayer movement. This is the pool of Siloam, where Jesus healed the blind man. They've just uncovered it in the last 10 or 15 years, and they're starting to build it out and turn it back into what it was, down beneath the city of David. We've talked about the mechanics of the prayer movement, so let's go to the next one. And then we're coming to New Orleans with the second prayer center. I couldn't find a pic. I have some pictures of New Orleans, and for the life, I spent 2 hours looking for those photographs, and I do such a bad job of storing them, I couldn't find them. So I took this copyrighted map and stole it. So we're coming to New Orleans, though. Don't tell the masters at the Copyright Office. Then let's go to the next, because the next thing we're going to do is the second phase of what we're going to be doing here is we're going to start working in education. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide real quickly. We're developing a curriculum for K through 12 to teach our children how to avoid being trafficked. I'm working with professionals. This is not a Christian guy sitting down, well, I'll just create a curriculum. I'll just write a curriculum. I'm working with people who develop curriculums for public schools now, who are Christians, but some of the most gifted curriculum developers you've ever seen, who have already said, I'm all in. You want to do this? Let me know when you're ready to start. We're going to develop that curriculum so that beginning in kindergarten, but all the way through the 12th grade, these kids are learning about human trafficking. It's not a hit here and a hit here and a hit here. It's a hit all the time. So it becomes part of what they understand, part of what they're thinking about, part of what they're looking for. Because the best way you can stop someone from being trafficked is to teach them how not to get sucked into it. Okay, let's go to the next one. We've talked about the mechanics of the education movement, but we're going to take it international. We're not just going to do this in America. We're going to use this curriculum in Europe and China. Anywhere that we can get this curriculum into the schools, we're going to use it, have it translated. Translation is no longer a big deal. And have it translated and put it into, this is about a $300,000 or $400,000 project by itself, just to give you an idea. Because you've got to pay people to develop professional products. And we're going to do this better than it's ever been done. We're not doing it halfway. And then the third thing that we're going to be working on in the initial movement, let's go to the next slide. This is weird, I know, because it doesn't necessarily feel like it fits into the sex trafficking, but it does. There are about 5 million refugees in Turkey right now from Syria. They've come from Syria to Turkey, but they're not just Syrians. Most of them are Muslims. A lot of them are, some of them are Christians. They're from Afghanistan. They're from Iran. They're from Iraq. They're ending up in Syria. Syria's shipping them to Turkey. Turkey keeps threatening to ship them to Greece. Greece, you remember 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, they were going to Greece and going up into Europe, to going to Germany and getting jobs. And that's where the whole crisis began. Well, now they're stuck in Greece. And in one of the refugee camps in Greece, they're literally have turned it into a brothel. The local Greeks, God bless the Greeks. I love the Greeks, but not the ones near Sparta, who've turned a refugee camp of people at their worst moments in life into a brothel. And so one of the things that we're going to do is we're establishing an asylum program to bring Christian refugees from Muslim countries to America to reestablish themselves. We're not sneaking them across the border. We'll be filing documents in Athens, Greece, to start there with the U.S. consulate, the U.S. embassy there to start the process. We'll be filing cases in North America to continue the process. We'll be finding families to house them who say, we'll take care of them until we can get them on their feet. And we're going to start trying to establish some refugee communities around America of Christians only. And there are organizations in Greece right now that are working and are distinguishing who are the Christians and who are not the Christians. Because let me tell you what happens in these camps. The Muslims control the camps. The Christians in the camps used to be Muslims. And what that means is, if you used to be a Muslim and you convert to Christianity, there is a fatwa that is placed on your head. And a fatwa means you can be killed, and it's a righteous killing. No legal judgment at all. So they won't give them food. They won't give them water. They won't give them medical care if they know they're Christian. The Christians are hiding in these camps. They're stabbing them. They're raping them, including the men and the boys. And sometimes they're killing them. And we're going to start working to get them out and get them here. Because Israel was commanded to care for the refugees. They were required to leave the gleanings from the harvest in the field for the refugees who would come along behind them and survive. And so we're going to start leaving some of the gleaning on the field. And that's how we're starting all of this. There's a whole bunch of other things, because this is only two of the mountains, really, a little bit of a third mountain. There's a whole lot more here, but I'm going to wrap it up at this point. And I'm going to tell you this, that here's what I want from you more than anything. I would love to have your commitment to pray. I know that as a church you've already committed to pray for me and for this ministry, and to pray about trafficking. We're building an intercessors network, a worldwide intercessors network of people to pray in 15-minute increments for nothing except the end of human trafficking. And I'd love for people who, I don't just want people to go, oh yeah, I'll do that. I want people who will commit to it and do it on a daily basis to let us know. And you can get in touch with the pastor. You can get in touch with me. That email address right there, joel@onevoiceinternational.com, is not active right now, but it will be active sometime this week. So if you'll write that down, and towards the end of the week, if you want to send me an email, it comes directly to me. Right now, this organization is me and my vision and some people. I've got a German attorney, a Greek attorney, some people in Israel, a pastor out in Kansas City, your pastor, and some of the brothers are committed to stand alongside us and make this happen. But more than anything, I covet your prayers, because we're about to take on the darkest group of people in the world who have no value for human life at all. And so that means that I'm painting a huge target on my chest. And the only thing that can keep that target from getting hit is the prayers of the saints. So when you're praying about this and praying for me, you're literally praying to help keep me alive. Because I'm committed to however long I've got left on this planet, this is what I'm doing. And we'll unveil more of it later. We can do it in some private meetings at some point when I come back, because I'm going to be in this community quite a bit. And I'm happy to have conversations. But email me and let's have a conversation. Let me pray for you real quickly, and then I'm going to let the pastor come in.